Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall so that I can go to City Walk. Hello, I'm Chandler O'Quinn. Welcome to Chandler's Travels. Today we are in Orlando, Florida, taking a look at some of the different pieces of Ronald Reagan history and Cold War history that you can see here in Orlando. Hope you'll enjoy it. So I'm here at Epcot Center, and what you may not know is that there's a pretty interesting piece of American history that took place right here in Epcot. This was the site for Ronald Reagan's second inaugural parade. So 1984 was a banner year both for the nation and for the Walt Disney Company. In 1984, Disney Company almost completely floundered. It had been several years of poor management. Lots of people there was no leadership. It was what would Walt do? And it was now some 15 years after Walt had died, and we were in a different world. And there were talks of splitting up the company. There was a green mail scam, which I don't fully comprehend what that is, but Saul Greenberg was going to try and take over the company with stock shares. Disney's son-in-law was running the studio side of things, and he wasn't doing a very good job. So eventually it leads to the ouster of Ron Miller and the bringing in of Michael Eisner and Frank Wells. That all happens in 1984 on the Disney side. Then on the national side, Ronald Reagan wins one of the largest landslides in American presidential history, going up against Walter Mondale, and Geraldine Ferrara wins something like 539 electoral votes. Come January 20th, it's time for the second inauguration of Ronald Reagan, and there's just this bitter blizzard that comes in to Washington, D.C. I think the highs were expected to be about 7 degrees Fahrenheit, with wind chills getting into the negative 20s. So all of the different things that would take place outside had to be moved inside. But you can't have a parade inside. So there were high school kids from all across the country who were hoping for their chance to play for the president, and they didn't get to. So Ronald Reagan gets re-inaugurated, and Michael Eisner over at the Disney Company decides that one way we can make it up is if we have an inaugural parade here at Epcot. And that we would have it in May. No chance of it being negative 20 in Epcot in Florida in May of 1985. So plans were made, and it was a true gathering of private companies, Burger King and Days Inn and Delta Airlines and all these different companies coming together to sponsor these kids. And they got about a third of the high school bands to come. So about 2,500 these students got to come here to Epcot and play for the president. Now, I'm at the entranceway to World Showcase, and it is somewhat of a controversial subject of how one enters World Showcase. Do you go in through Mexico, or do you go in through Canada? Well, Ronald Reagan didn't like either of those answers. He decided, well, I'd like to go in through America, which is in the dead center there. And so he did. He took Marine One. And the Marine One helicopter landed behind the American Adventure. He then got in the Beast, which is the presidential limousine, rode all the way around World Showcase, and then went back to the American Pavilion. We'll pick back up there in just a moment. All right, so I am here on the other side of World Showcase. Behind me is the America Adventure Pavilion. That is where, just behind that building, is where on Memorial Day of 1985, Marine One landed, and President Reagan and First Lady Nancy Reagan stepped out, where the presidential limousine was waiting for them to take them on a world trip around World Showcase, and then come right back in front of World Showcase. There was a special pavilion that was constructed where the stage is. Let's see if I can get over there. So over in this area, right where the candlelight processional happens during Christmas time, which is actually happening right now, which is why I can't do this right in front of the place where it took place. But still, after their world trip, they landed back here in America. They climbed into their special bulletproof stage in front of the American Adventure Pavilion. And there, Michael Eisner gave some opening remarks, one of which being that the oldest American to ever climb Mount Everest was in attendance. Then President Reagan spoke, and he talked about, in a time that we live in today, in 2025, our politicians don't have very much ideological consistency. That is one thing you cannot say about Ronald Reagan. It is a very ideologically consistent speech. He talks about that the private sector is championing everything, that the private sector and individuals are what built America. One of the great examples of this is Walt Disney, a little boy from Missouri who had a knack for drawing barn animals and put everything on the line to make that a reality and make Mickey Mouse. And as he was talking about Mickey Mouse, there is an actual mascot of Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. They're in this wagon that is pulling a 1907 Calliope. And he's talking about all of the joy that Mickey Mouse has brought to the world and all the joy that Walt Disney has brought. And as he talks about Mickey Mouse, I don't know if it is the fact that he has early onset dementia or if he's just that great of an actor, but as he's talking about Mickey Mouse, he looks over to this teenager that's sweating it out, dressed as Mickey Mouse, and with just all the love in his eyes, as if that is the actual Mickey Mouse on that Calliope right now. And that is my friend Mickey. It is truly, it hits you right in the heart. So after that speech, the parade begins. One more thing about the speech is that Reagan talks about that we are on the outset of a second American Revolution. That this second American Revolution is going to take place in the form of tax reform, which I don't know. I mean, I guess the first American Revolution was about tax reform, but it just took some musket balls in order to make that happen. But he says that this great tax reform that he's about to announce, which he does at the conclusion of Memorial Day weekend, is going to change everything about the American economic system. What he's talking about is what eventually becomes the Tax Reform Act of 1986, a bipartisan effort, Republicans and Democrats coming together, lowering the tax rates of corporations from 50% to 35%, of individuals from 50% to like 28%. I don't know if I would call that a second American Revolution, but hey, that's what Ronald Reagan was talking about right here at Epcot, May 25th, or somewhere at Memorial Day, 1985. A few more things that I've been thinking about with this second inaugural happening at, or Reagan's second inaugural happening here at Epcot is, in a way, it's very fitting because Epcot, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, which was Walt Disney's last dream, was the embodiment of everything that Reagan would hope could happen in terms of public and private partnerships. Walt Disney's dream, which is nowhere near close to being what Epcot actually is, was all based around corporations coming together and creating the next generation of workers and innovations and ingenuity, and constantly changing over the technology that would be used in people's homes, that people are actually living here. It's some wild stuff. But even the theme park that it becomes in the 1980s is the development of General Motors and Raytheon and Exxon and Monsanto and Kraft and all of these companies who have actually done probably a lot of bad things in this world, but to offset that, they created these pavilions to showcase the good things that they were doing. And that's what Epcot was. It wouldn't exist without all of these private entities, all these corporations coming together. And the same thing with this whole inaugural parade. It happened because of these corporations, because of Burger King and Days Inn and Delta Airlines and all of these companies and public. The Osceola County put in, I think, $150,000 towards all of this. Disney itself put in $350,000. All to get all these high school kids to have their opportunity to play for the president. So very fitting that all of this happens here at Epcot. And I think that's all I have for you on this edition, or this story that we're telling of Reagan's second inaugural. More to come from my trip to Orlando. So behind me is the Hard Rock Cafe here at Universal City Walk. The original plan was to talk about the piece of the Berlin Wall that they have behind the Hard Rock Cafe. But the Hard Rock Cafe, being what they are, was blasting that hard rock music, certainly unclearable music, just hit after hit. And I just could not manage to get over the sound of all of that to talk to you about that piece of the Berlin Wall and the Berlin Wall in general. So we're going to do it here. So the Berlin Wall was constructed in 1961 to separate East Berlin from West Berlin. After the conclusion of World War II, the Allied powers divided all of Germany into East and West, and then they also divided Berlin into East and West. The eastern part being held by the communist East Germans, the western part by the West Germans, the free market capitalist powers. in 1961, they were finding that a lot of the people who were trapped on the eastern side really wanted to get over to the western side to experience all of the freedom and free market capitalism that allowed them. So they developed this whole wall. There's actually an interesting story that I don't know if I'm ever going to get to Berlin to tell this story there, so I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about it here. When I was growing up, I grew up just a few houses down from a German professor. His name was Charles Hansen. He actually studied in Berlin in 1961 as the wall is going up. And he told us this story, and I'm not completely sure if this is an actual true story or just some sort of joke that was going on at the time. But the story goes like this, that Mr. Hansen is this young man in Berlin, and he's staying at this hotel, and he's having a very hard time getting to sleep at night because of the sound of the train that is right by his window. It just keeps going, hour after hour, this train going by. So he wakes up the next morning, he's talking to the clerk. The clerk says, how did you sleep? And he goes, I couldn't sleep at all because of the train that was outside. And the clerk says, there's no train outside. There's no tracks anywhere near this hotel. And this was very perplexing to Mr. Hansen. So the next night he tries to go to sleep, and again, this train is outside his window. And he looks outside the window and he sees a whole company of East German soldiers, and they are carrying the materials to build the Berlin Wall. And they have this bucket brigade of this rubble and bricks and things to build this wall. And as they are handing these buckets to each other, they are saying, Bitteschön, Dankeschön, Bitteschön, Dankeschön, Bitteschön, Dankeschön, Bitteschön, Dankeschön, Bitteschön, Dankeschön. And it is these 20, 30 men all thanking and pleasing each other that made him think that there was a train outside of his window. So that is just a little story about the construction of the Berlin Wall. Of course, the Berlin Wall would fall in November of 1989. Why is there a piece of it here in Orlando? Why is it somewhat tucked away behind the Hard Rock Cafe? Well, I think Hard Rock has a lot to play with why the Berlin Wall fell. You are not going to get the same kind of entertainment available to you in the Western world when you're tucked behind the Iron Curtain. And people have a hard time understanding what things like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and David Hasselhoff would mean to those people who had nothing but government propaganda given to them in East Germany. So they would have this free radio that would get over the wall, and people would have cassette tapes and record all these songs from all these hard rock artists and then pass it along, and people start to think, you know, I want to not have to do this illegally. I want to have this in my life all the time, and that kind of pressure is what led to the wall coming down in 1989. So it's not altogether unfitting for a piece of that Berlin Wall to be behind us here at the Hard Rock Cafe. That just about wraps up this episode of Chandler's Travels. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe to the channel. All of that helps us in growing this experiment so that I can take even more of you along with me on my journeys. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, vaya con Dios.